Okay, we are in for a treat today. We are so excited for this first activity that we get to see. And I'm going to let Don Gifford come up and introduce the first agenda item today. So welcome, Don.
Thanks, guys. Most of you guys are familiar with National History Day projects. So National History Day is a national competition. Kids start out, do a project at their school. They go through a regional competition, then through a state competition, and then finally a national competition in College Park, Maryland. And at that College Park, Maryland meeting, thank you. At that College Park, Maryland meeting this year, a Kansas student, Max Kuhlman from Wamego Elementary School, won the special prize given out by the Library of Congress for the most outstanding presentation about discovery and exploration. Okay, so we're lucky to have Max here with us this morning. Accompanying Max this morning are his parents, Jennifer and Jason Kuhlman, and his coach, Ashley Beeson-Means. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Max.
Hello, my name is Max Coleman, and the title of my performance is How the Tragedy of the Apollo 1 Fire Led to the Great Triumph of the Apollo 11 Moon Landing. We choose to go the moon. We choose to go the moon. We choose to go the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Within these last 19 months, at least 45 satellites have circled the Earth, and some 4 of them have been made in the United States of America, and they were far more sophisticated, supplied far more knowledge for the people of the world than those of the Soviet Union. I think the speech is ready for next week at Rice Stadium. And why have we been doing this? Because bad pigs and how bad that made me look. And those Soviets are now their firsts. What? How does JFK think we can get a man on the moon? By 1969. There's already 1962. Just 4 Americans have been in space, only 2 have been in orbit. At least we can support human life in space and safely get them back to Earth. The moon, 238,000 miles. This all started with the Soviet Union and their Sputnik. They nailed a lunar crash on the moon. Then to top it all off, they sent the first man in space. And you orbited too. Oh, that Yuri Gagarin. Just think about how much money that'll cost. All of it could be used here on Earth. Hey, Jack Jackson, come on over here. I can't believe I, Gus Grissom, am going to be the first astronaut on all 3 mission programs. Mercury, which sent a man in orbit. I became the second American in space. Gemini, which had spacewalks and dockings, all to prepare us to go to the moon. I became the first astronaut pilot of a 2-man spacecraft. Now Apollo, which will land us on the moon. There's even talk that I might be the first man to walk on the moon. It couldn't have happened though if NASA thought I purposely blew the hatch of my Mercury mission, Liberty Bell 7, causing it to sink and not be found. I was even about to drown, all because I didn't close the oxygen valve in my suit. I was also about to take the urinal knife. They only 9 of that design and they only made for the Mercury 7 missions. Time sure does fly. The Liberty Bell 7 was in 1962, and it was already in 1967. Now the Apollo capsules won't sink because we have an inward opening hatch and no explosive bolts. On the Apollo program, I think we're going too quickly. Like how the communications are just horrible. We can't even talk from 2 buildings away. The moon's a lot more than 2 buildings away. Why are we even using Block 1 capsule with no lunar module? Why are we making so many changes to the capsule and the checklist while we're so close to launch date? If they don't change these things, I may need to hang another lemon on the hatch. You know, Jack, if anything tragic were to happen on any U.S. space mission, I sure hope the space program will continue. I think I got a big one. Hello, my name is Joseph Totten, and I'm an engineer at NASA. And as most of you know, there's a tragic fire in the Apollo 1 during the plugs-out test that led to the deaths of Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. The fire spread quickly because we used 100% oxygen at 5 pounds per square inch. The crew did not have time to open the hatch with a wrench, so they were trapped inside. We believe the cause of the fire was from either the communications or the environmental control systems. That was in 1967 and is already 1968. And after an intro NASA Review Board, the congressional hearing, we have made over 1,000 changes. Here are a few. We made it easier for the crew to leave the capsule, such as the fact that when never close the hatch during plugs-out test. The crew can leave the capsule in 7 seconds, but a safety crew can open the hatch in 10 seconds, partially due to the fact that we have a gas-powered mechanism on the hatch. We had technical changes which improved the communications. We have stricter and more closely monitored safety of test operations. We had an in-depth review of the entire life support systems. We will now use 60% oxygen and 40% nitrogen on land. And while we're in space, we'll slowly change to 100% oxygen at 5 pounds per square inch. We now have more control on flammable material inside the capsule, like Velcro, which are mammoth fibers now. And we had tests on how to control extinguished spacecraft fire, which led to us installing fire extinguishers, water hoses, and exhaust fans inside the white room, which is right inside the hatch. With all these changes that were successful on the Apollo unmanned missions 4 through 6, we now make the Apollo 7 manual per mission, which will do the same job as the Apollo 1 is going to do, will not end in such a tragedy. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. What? How? Just 7 years ago, JFK said he would land man on the moon. Here we are, on July 20th, 1969, with a man on the moon. I thought it was impossible, but it happened, that's for sure. Got over the tragedy of the Apollo 1 fire, now the great triumph of the Apollo 11 moon landing. We beat the Soviet Union too. I bet that in 50 years now, people will still be talking about this. Arson or Bob Dole saying technologies, even for the average American like me, are coming out because of space race. What will they think of next? Work with the Soviet Union in space? That'd be crazy. Or even go to Mars. As you now know, the tragedy of the Apollo 1 fire led to the great triumph of the Apollo 11 moon landing. This short-term impact is what JFK's moon speech was all about. Just 6 years later, the U.S. did have a doctrine with the Soviet Union, and we're still working with the Russians in space today. The economic impact is that the Apollo program cost over $30 billion, and that an estimated 420,000 people were employed because of NASA ad site. The social impact is some modern technology, such as improvement in running shoe soles, track roofs. The first one was at Houston Reliant Stadium. Meteorology equipment, like satellites, aluminum foil, solar power, cordless tools, such as dustbuster, battery powered drills, and screwdrivers, and medical equipment, like defibrillators and pacemakers. Through my research, I realized that the Apollo hatch was designed the way it was to make sure it didn't blow open like the Liberty Bell 7 hatch did. I determined that the Apollo 11 moon landing would not have been successful within a decade if the Apollo on Fire had not occurred. I conclude that many people today do not know about the Apollo on Fire and its result on the Apollo 11 moon landing, which is why I felt it was so important to share its story. Thank you.
I'm sure some of you may have some questions for Max.
Well, Max, that was great. You know, I kind of remember that. I definitely remember watching that show sitting at home 50 years ago and watching the moon landing. And the Apollo 1 fire was one that I do remember now that you talk about it, but to understand its impact, you really brought that to light. So thank you for what you did and what a great experience you've had. You did a great job, just a wonderful job. I'm sure some board members have some questions, I have no doubt. They're all awestruck. Yeah, Ann?
Thank you. What do you think was the most valuable thing? And thank you, Max. That was just awesome. As a former science teacher, I'm just got goosebumps. And class of '69, you know, that was good too. But what do you think was the biggest thing you got out of doing this project personally?
Just knowing I could have the capability to do a project like this.
Are you thinking of any others you might like to tackle? Anything else catch your interest while you were looking at this one?
Can't think of anything right now, but I know I'm going to want to do History Day again next year.
Great. Well, thank you. It was awesome.
Jim Porter?
Why did you choose this? Oh, by the way, great job. We really appreciate that. It's very impressive. Why did you choose this project, and did you consider others, and then eliminate them and choose this one?
So I have always been interested in space, and I knew less about Gus Grissom and his space missions, so I thought it would be a good place to start.
Jean?
That was a wonderful presentation. I was just wondering if you're going to have the opportunity to present that to other schools or classrooms, because you really brought history to life, and I think it would really help other students understand that period in our history.
I don't think I'm going to do any more, but I already did one to my 3 classes in my grade and my sister's class.
Well, that's wonderful. I hope that there are other opportunities, because I think you did a fabulous job. Thank you.
You know, after you're presented today, you might get a few other opportunities. Okay, Janet?
All I can say is just amazing. That was wonderful. I'm so proud of you. What grade are you in?
I'm going into 7th grade.
Going into 7th grade. Wonderful. Have you thought about what you'd like to do in the future? Is there anything that you're excited about that, other than this? This is pretty exciting. You did an amazing job. Will you possibly become an astronaut?
In the future, I think I would want to become an aerospace engineer.
Amazing. And I think you will do very well. Congratulations.
Any other questions? Yeah, Jean?
I just wanted to thank your coach and your parents, because I know that it takes a lot of support for doing this type of thing, and I think you all, did a very good job supporting him in this. So thank you very much. Great job, Max.
And Max, or Mom and Dad, or the coach, why don't you just share with the board a little bit about History Day and the overall, what it is, and I think some folks know, but some folks may not.
I'm Ashley.
Go ahead.
Yeah, come on up to the microphone, Ashley.
I'm Ashley Beeson-Manus. I am actually not Max's teacher, but he came to a National History Day camp that I host each summer as a beginner, and had this very obvious drive and interest in this particular topic. So he was at Wamego Elementary School, where I do not teach, and traditionally not a lot of elementary schools take part in History Day. So because he did not have a sponsor at his school, I was able to kind of act as his sponsor while he still represented his school. National History Day is an organization that encourages kids 6th through 12th grades to explore various history topics deeply rooted in research. And students learn a great deal about seeking out different primary and secondary sources, conducting interviews with various people who may have expertise or were present for different events, and then have to compete by displaying their projects in one of 5 categories: performance, documentary, website, exhibit, and what am I forgetting? Website, documentary, exhibit, historical paper. So Max chose a performance, which is an especially impactful, I think, way to present specific topics, especially his. When it's done well, it's fabulous. So I'm very proud of Max, and I will be losing him to Washburn Rural Middle School. The gifted education facilitators there tend to host History Day. So I hope he continues through 7th and 8th grade. I also want to mention one of my students who, Thomas Schmidt, had a lot of success at National History Day. Really, I think, served as more of a coach to him, especially as he neared nationals. And it was a really cool thing for me to see as a teacher, the student mentorship and a new relationship that maybe wouldn't have existed without History Day. And then, of course, his parents were phenomenal, because it's a family effort to support these kids too. So, but I'll let either of you speak to that.
Michelle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank you for your presentation today, and thank you, parents, and thank you, Coach. That was amazing work. I wondered, after you did it the first time, did you add to it, or do you felt like you had to add more to it as it went along, or did it work out perfectly the first time?
Each time after you go to district, then the judges give you feedback, and then you make changes for state, and then they give you feedback, and then you make more changes for nationals.
Did you feel comfortable making those changes, or? Very good. Thank you.
So Mom and Dad, how was this process for you guys?
We kind of filled roles.
Come on up to the microphone. We're actually being broadcast on the internet, so.
It's been wonderful to see his growth. I knew he was capable of doing it, but it's like each time he still amazes me. Every time I see it, and the growth and change, and when he would get feedback, even sometimes he just made the decision. Yes, I'm going to make that change. No, I feel confident in what I'm doing. It was a lot of, I would say, for the first 5 months, because he started the end of July last year at the camp. And through December, he worked on it for a few hours on the weekends. Almost every weekend, we would carve out time. Like, okay, it's time to work on that. And then January, you start preparing for district. So he then had to, because he had prepared that process paper and his annotated bibliography, which were fluid. They kept changing a little bit as he went. But then from January into February, he was then rehearsing the script that he had written and making changes. And it became where he was working on it during the evenings. That was his pastime, was working on the rehearsal. And he will tell you, what was your favorite part, Max?
The research.
The research. As a 6th grader, research was his favorite part. And his probably least favorite was rehearsing. And which I think is a little, as we've talked to other students, that was a kind of a flip from what most students would say. And so he was almost 5 to 7 days a week rehearsing, at least running through it at least once between January through nationals. He took a little bit of a break and didn't rehearse as much between district and state, and found that that was not beneficial. And so between state and nationals, he rehearsed, I would say, at least 5 times a week. So it's been a huge, just carving out that time, and we didn't have a hard time getting him to do it, but he loves projects, and anytime they have projects in school, he loves projects, whether it's individual or working as a group, and the ability to take something on, take charge of something himself. So.
Oh, very good. Project-based learning sounds like that's going to be his thing, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we couldn't be more proud of the job that you've done, and certainly how you represented not only your school and your family and, you know, your district, but also the state of Kansas, and coming back with that award is just incredible. So we really thank you for coming and taking the time to present to us. This is obviously for us a highlight of our meeting, is to get to see students and what you guys do in your school. So this is really, really great. Yeah, we would love to do a picture with you if you'd honor us with that opportunity.
Madam Chair,
We would love
I'd
that.
like to note that his paper is included in our materials.
Okay,
you
very
know,
good.
And it's very well written and very well done. That's the part that's kind of silent, you know, but it's the bedrock of what you've done here. And from what you just said, the research is what you really liked. And that's really cool, because you can't do this without really good research. You know, great job.
We're going to be interested to hear more from you in the future, Max. So thanks again, and we'll kind of gather for a picture.
Great job.
Next agenda item, and Stacy Smith and Natalie Clark are going to talk to us about an update on career technical education as far as the pathways are concerned, and some resource readiness stuff. And you guys are so lucky you get to follow that. I mean, how do you follow that?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Mr. Jones drove through the thunder, and then Max stole the thunder, and here we are. So, you know, I briefly popped into my mind. I was born in '68, and so I think about elementary school, science experience, project-based learning. I think that was all another offshoot of the space program, and the emphasis that was driven into STEM around that time period. So you just think about the residual effects of some of those elements. So we're interested to talk about where some of those opportunities are in classrooms today in reference to the individual plan of study and career and technical education. We have streamlined our presentation a little bit today. I think originally it was around 85 slides, and we've trimmed that back to 45. Traditionally, this time of the year, we come to you with pathway changes in courses, competencies, based around the input that we receive from business and industry committee members, as well as post-secondary partners that are a part of our cluster review committees. And so generally, we have consultants come in and we run through 5 or 6 slides for each one of those pathways. We've condensed and compressed that information, and it is in the blue folder for you to look at. We have revisited through committee meetings, architecture and construction, finance, health science, and education and training pathways. There are numerous summaries of changes within the packets. We invite you to examine those at your leisure. If you have questions about programming decisions that were made as a result of those committee meetings, I can connect you with the CTE consultants and get you written explanations, or we can schedule conference calls to discuss those elements. Committee members are listed in there if you wanted to reach out to any of those committee members. And we look forward to talking you through that process as you consider those pathway changes and then vote for approval at the next board meeting. And that will allow us to spend this time presenting to you about some of our efforts this year, particularly in work-based learning and how that coordinates with workforce readiness, some of our new ideas that have emerged through our interagency collaboration through the Governor's Education Council, with the Department of Commerce, Department of Labor, and Kansas Board of Regents. Just by the numbers, if you look at our outcome metrics, we're now at 3,234 state-approved pathways in the 7 career fields. Those span about 282 school districts that have state-approved pathways. Some of those other schools just don't apply for the state-approved pathways and run their own pathways. They still practice career and technical education. It's just not within that state-approved pathway model. 1,810 students earned the incentivized credential this year from that Excel and CTE list. 11,700 students are enrolled in those Excel and CTE courses, which are tuition-free courses offered through post-secondary and secondary collaboration. So those would be dual enrollment. We have around 23,560 participants in our career and technical student organizations and are currently listing 23,350 student concentrators in CTE courses. Student concentrators are those students who have completed at least 2 credits within a pathway. This year, we are doing a lot of work around Perkins 5, and you may have heard some of that. We create a state-approved plan for career and technical education, and we submit that to acquire our Perkins 5 grant. We do that work in collaboration with the Kansas Board of Regents, so we can create a continuity of programming and a clear pathway for students into the workforce. As far as a timeline for some of that Perkins 5 work, the state plan is currently being developed, and we'll continue working on that through September. July 25th, there is a Kansas Association of Career and Technical Education Teachers in Manhattan, Kansas. If that's not on your radar and you need information about it or would like to look into that, just contact me and we can get that registration information to you. That's a gathering of CTE teachers in Manhattan. It's a 2-day conference. On July 24th, we will be working on the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment, where we're bringing together 19 different groups across the state. These groups are centered around a workforce development partner, a community college, and then the schools and service centers that have that programming. And again, having them take a look at the local data for their region and examine what their priorities are for developing their pathway systems. In July, we will draft our state performance levels for our outcome metrics or performance indicators. August and September, we will get stakeholder comment on those. There will be some more comprehensive local needs assessment meetings in October at the Workforce Innovation Conference. At that point, there will be a meeting with Governor Kelly to present our workforce plan for pathways. In November, we will incorporate public comment, and based upon that, we'll tweak the state plan, and it will be presented to the entities in January that we seek feedback from, and then that will go to the governor for a signature in February. And in March, that is due to the U.S. Department of Education. So that's some of the process around Perkins 5. There's a whole lot more detail we could sink into if you have time to attend one of those comprehensive local needs assessment and see how we're empowering local stakeholders to make some decisions around their programming to meet some of our state goals. Scott Stump is Assistant Secretary at the U.S. Department of Education, centered around adult and continuing education, as well as career and technical education programmings. And with the Perkins 5 implementation and some of his public comments to groups, he told states to be bold, to look at their needs, to decide how to manage the flexibility offered by the federal program, and then develop their local initiatives to suit the priorities that they had. And so we've kept that in mind as we worked with the other agencies that are in the space of preparing workforce readiness. And at the center of that was some collaboration around defining what work-based learning is, what our goals are for workforce development, work-based learning, and how we can help move our communities forward. Natalie has been the lead for some of this interagency collaboration, and I invite Natalie to come up and inform you about some of that work.
Good morning. We had the opportunity to work with the National Governors Association. They supported a team from Kansas with representatives cross-agency, Department of Commerce, Department of Labor, Board of Regents, and Department of Education. So we developed a definition, interagency definition for work-based learning. It includes a continuum of awareness, exploration, and preparation that combines an individual career goals, IPS, structured classroom learning, and authentic work experiences implemented through a sustained partnership with Kansas business and industry. Work-based learning activities with industry or community professionals culminate in a validation and measurement of acquired knowledge, skills, and possible employment. So this is a definition that we all agreed upon as part of the NGA Knowledge Exchange teamwork. And here at KSDE, an infographic was created. The top statement that spans the continuum is representative of the IPS, increasing the individualization for each student based upon their interests, skills, and goals with career possibilities. Along the bottom, the statement, we wanted to make sure that career and technical student organizations with their cross-curricular practice in the classroom were also recognized. And we have 3 phases across the continuum. We wanted schools to recognize the work that was done both in the classroom and out of the classroom with career awareness experiences beginning as early as elementary school. Some of those may include guest speakers, career fairs, field trips, or tours. And we had an IPS survey that was completed in the spring. And the question was asked, what work-based learning experiences are your students engaged in your schools? And the orange is 2019 and the blue is 2018. We had 437 responses, and this is the percent of districts that responded. So 72% of students are engaging, they're having guest speakers, 74% career fairs, field trips 71%, and tours 50%. So we did see a small increase compared to last year. We're encouraging at the elementary age, this is the infographic to expose the 7 career fields. Some samples of those, schools ask, Prep KC facilitates experiences in the Kansas City metro area, both on the Kansas and Missouri side. Instead of a guest speaker, they have career jumping. So they invite a lot of career professionals in and the students rotate among those professionals. Career Fair at ESDAC, they overtake the mall in Hutchinson. Last year, I believe over 5,000 students participated in the 2-day career fair. The Mobile Learning Lab, this is bringing exposure, aviation, advanced manufacturing, and health sciences to schools across the state. This is really helpful for teacher externships as well as student exposure. The next phase of the continuum, career exploration, includes job shadows, mock interviews, field trips, career mentoring. When we ask which type of experiences students were involved in, job shadows this year, about 54% of those who responded said their students were engaged in job shadowing. Mock interviews, 49%, and career mentoring, 20%. At this stage, the middle school age, we're encouraging the exposure to the 16 career clusters. And examples of those might include, this is a mentoring fair sponsored by KC STEM Alliance. And this is David Disney, J.E. Dunn. He was exposing young girls to construction. Mock interviews, Meade Middle School in Wichita. This is a great example, and it's a link to, they have an annual Mock Your Socks Off for 8th graders. So all of the 8th graders professionally dress, and they are participating in mock interviews with professionals in the Wichita area. In Wamego, the seniors are required before they leave, before they graduate, to have 3 interviews and present their portfolio. What's unique about this is they also practice their dining etiquette, and they dine with the interviewers midday. So again, they have 3 interviews, they present their portfolio, and have an experience for dining etiquette. And the career preparation phase, the last phase in the continuum, the survey responses, the number of districts that said that their students were engaged in internships, 29%, clinical rotation or health science exposure, 21%, community-based professional learning, 36%, supervised ag experiences, 23%, a few apprenticeships, school-based enterprise, 42%, and a supervised entrepreneurial experience, 14%. So some examples of what those might include. At the high school level, the career and technical education pathways, these students have had some technical training and go out for a long-term experience, whether it be paid or unpaid. In St. John-Hudson High School, St. John, Kansas, the students have engaged with the community, and there is a Tiger Town pizza around the town square. The students created the business plan for this endeavor. They had a contest that helped name the establishment Tiger Town Pizza, and Tiger happens to be their school mascot. They also created the menu, and one of the menu items is the Dean Supreme. If you follow K-State basketball, Dean Wade, his home is in St. John. So the students in the culinary department also created the recipes that they use in the menu. So this is a good example of classroom collaboration with the community. Simulated work-based experience. I know the Washburn Rural students presented within the year to you all, but I wanted to make note that this is a career and technical student organization experience. They have a DECA certified gold level Common Grounds coffee shop, so they were recognized nationally for their gold certification in their school-based enterprise. There are several models in the state that we have been following that we feel would be helpful to replicate in other parts of Kansas. One of those being the Building Bridges Partnership that Kansas Workforce One, Tucky Allen helps coordinate. Newton High School, they're in their third year. They engaged with Workforce One to develop the connections between education, business, and industry. They have a Building Bridges night. They invite industry, parents, students, and advisory committee members in, and they show them their technical programs, and they say, would you like to volunteer to host a job shadow? Would you like to be a guest speaker? Or would you like to be a host for an intern? Building Bridges is also a program that is being utilized in Garden City, Great Bend, Halstead. Another youth employment program in Wichita that is a great model, and we've been talking with Keith at Workforce Alliance of South Central Kansas. The youth employment program, students apply for internship opportunities. The article here from the Wichita Eagle was a gentleman from Douglas High School. The Workforce Center comes in, and those students who have applied for internship opportunities, the Workforce Center gives required workshops on workplace etiquette, customer service, resume and interview skills, and financial literacy. So we feel that this is a very strong program that could be replicated in other parts of the state. On the continuum under career preparation, there is a youth registered apprenticeship program. And this is a Department of Commerce program. Chastity Troxel is the lead through the Department of Commerce. And she has been co-presenting with us, and she has been invited and plans to co-present in September at some of our CTE conferences. But this is an opportunity for juniors or seniors in high school. They have to be at least 16 years of age. It's a learn while you earn opportunity. So if there is businesses in the region that are needing employees, and you have students that have interests, the businesses can apply to be a youth registered apprenticeship site. They have to also be a registered apprenticeship site. So a lot of the resources we have developed, they go through an application process, and then they are interviewed by that business. But this is an opportunity that we would like to have more districts engage in. There's been several meetings that Stacy and I have attended with districts and businesses that are trying to determine if this might work in their communities. Going back to career and technical student organizations, some of the competitive events are a great way for students to demonstrate teamwork, that important employability skill. And FBLA also has an electronic career portfolio presentation. So a minimum requirement of the IPS is an electronic portfolio. So we have made sure that our recommendations have aligned with the competitive events. Shifting gears somewhat, we have been focusing on employability skills, that component of the successful high school graduate. And in the middle of all of our career and technical education models, we have career success. and is broken up into 3 domains: applied knowledge, effective relationship, and workplace skills. And those domains are recommended by the U.S. Department of Education Employability Skills Framework. And we have developed a resource that was passed out to you today. The College and Career Readiness and Success Center, housed at American Institute for Research, as well as C3, helped us research how other states were measuring and reflecting student learning following work-based learning experiences. So we developed a guidance, and in this document here, we developed a portfolio recommendation. We were having districts say, what would you recommend that students place in their portfolio? On page 9, we have these 7 components that we've recommended that we felt that would demonstrate students' career readiness. So that is a guidance that schools may use. In addition, we have an employability skills self-assessment. And on page 12, we're encouraging students to self-assess their employability skills, and it's this booklet here. At least once a year, and place this in their electronic portfolio. Again, we followed the outline of the U.S. Department of Education's framework. And we developed a detailed employability skills rubric on pages 13 through 15. What's interesting about this is we tailored this for Kansas. We had the College and Career Readiness and Success Center come in and work with us on a rubric that we felt, based upon research, would be most helpful for students. And we crosswalked it with the Kansas CAN competency framework. So we had Dr. Noonan come in and look at the 26 competencies on the Kansas CAN competency wheel and crosswalk those in relation to the U.S. Department of Education Employability Skills Framework. We felt a lot of districts were using that. We wanted to show how those works crosswalked. We also crosswalked the social and emotional character development standards with the employability skills. Another resource that we created, Kansas Work-Based Learning Personalized Learning Plan, came out of the work from the National Governors Association. Our cross-collaborative, we had feedback from the Department of Commerce saying they felt that if we had a fillable digital form for businesses, that would be helpful for their engagement to assess employability and technical skills. So in this document, I'll just mention a few pages. We have the definitions starting on page 2. So you'll see the work-based learning continuum. Last year, the Governor's Education Council subcommittee work, we had superintendents say it would be very helpful to have definitions of each type of work-based learning experience. So when they met with their insurance provider or their legal counsel, they would have clear definitions of the different experiences. And business and industry said it would also be helpful if students were using similar forms for evaluation across the districts. So we have developed this resource to support business, students, and educators. In section 1, there's a work-based learning agreement that would be encouraged for all students to complete. Section 2, this would be just for the worksite supervisor and adult mentor. It's broken into 2 parts. The employability skills assessment, it's the same breakdown as in the other document that we looked at that's outlined by the U.S. Department of Education. On page 16, for long-term, such as an internship, we're requiring a minimum of 8 measurable learning outcomes that should be tied to the competencies and the pathways or the course that they're enrolled in. So those 2 forms were recommended by the Department of Commerce to help business and industry have an online fillable form. Section 3 would be for the student, starting on page 19, and it's green coded. So they would self-assess employability skills to see what they may want to focus on in their work-based learning experience. We have a reflection sheet. We're encouraging that the students upload artifacts and reflect on those in their portfolio, and then that they also create measurable learning outcomes based upon the technical skills that they're learning in their courses and pathways. The last section is section 4. On page 25, there's safety training logs, so some of those experiences to document the safety training that they're receiving. On page 26, a liability agreement is a district choice We're not recommending any, but we're encouraging one to be in place. And on page 27, this is required. It is a work log of all out-of-school students. The auditors will look at this documentation to show the date, location, time, and the work completed tied back to the course that the student is enrolled in. So this is a document that we've recently completed that we're sharing at the Impact Institutes. Rather than relay the youth labor laws in this document, the Department of Labor, this is an outcome of our National Governors Association team, created a work-based learning fact sheet. So this fact sheet is on their website, and it has links to safety, workplace safety, talking about liability issues, both state and federal, wage and hour laws. So they have hosted this on their website, and in this document and on the online document, it will link directly there for workplace safety labor laws. I know many of you have seen the Kansas Career Navigator, but we're continuing to encourage schools to use this in addition to their individual plan of study for research into occupations. And what's new is there is now a training course for the Kansas Career Navigator that teachers and students can take so that they can understand what's available in Kansas Career Navigator. The NGA project is over, but we have continued to collaborate cross-agency, and we have talked about how might we establish work-based learning intermediaries to coordinate our state and regional efforts. So we have been in meetings with Department of Commerce, Labor, and the Board of Regents, and we have talked about how can we align statewide to promote regional work-based learning collaboration and communication of resources, and how could we develop regional networks that may serve as a one-stop help for school districts. So some of the things that we have talked about, we said perhaps a pilot would be a place to start and try to develop an intermediary network in each of the 5 workforce regions. We talked with Department of Commerce, and their workforce centers and local workforce boards are open to the idea of helping place students. They have those ties to business and industries. They would help, as in the examples of the Youth Employment Project and the Building Bridges. In addition, it was brought up that kansasworks.com is a clearinghouse for jobs that are posted statewide. We talked about the possibility of using that clearinghouse to post work-based learning experiences for students. We also talked with the Board of Regents about externships for teachers in each of the regions, having those teachers engage in professional development on campuses with the professors in the technical and community colleges. We talked about having purposeful career awareness exploration for middle school and high school on the campuses of the technical and community colleges in the region. We've talked with Department of Commerce about developing a model for a youth registered apprenticeship in each area. We have also talked with the Board of Regents about developing pathway models with our 37 pathways next year, how they align to the post-secondary programs. And we've also talked about professional development for work-based learning coordinators. So regionally, Department of Commerce, Board of Regents, Department of Labor, and KSDE sharing our resources and so that they know where to reach out in their region. So we have had a lot of conversation around these different ideas, and it's exciting, and we're meeting monthly with these different agencies.
Let me back up for just a second. I'm going to talk about this graphic because so as Natalie's going through the presentation, I'm thinking and reading your faces, and I'm thinking about the information and these toolkits. I would just like to note that Natalie and I just turned 3. So we've been through with the state agency for 3 years, and we were classroom teachers right before that. So we want to know how it's going to work. If I'm supposed to do this in the classroom, where are my resources? How does that work? So we kind of went to that end and walked you through that. The strategic plan that Natalie is walking you through is kind of the detailed umbrella part of this for the different agencies and how some of that work might be feathered out if we have some collaboration. And as we're getting into all these details, it occurred to me we didn't talk about why and what that big why is and answering why this is an initiative. And so if we go back and we think about 71% post-secondary effective rate, we think about the 29% of the jobs in our economy that require a high school graduation or equivalent. Now, what's the trajectory for success for those students and how do we provide those services? So making sure that every kid has their fire lit in the way that Max did this morning. I would say very much that the activities that he's engaged in are career exploration. They're understanding the world, they're understanding the opportunities that are in front of him. And so the question is, does every student have access to that level of career exploration and that level of mentoring and family support? So when I mentioned Perkins 5 at the beginning of it, I didn't address equity and access as a part of this equation. And so 48% of post-secondary effective rate is where we're at. If this gets us 10%, and I don't know that that's the hard metric around it, but if work-based learning can factor into increasing our post-secondary effective rate and preparation for the workforce, that's the why we're involved in this space. And it very much overlaps with the individual plan of study because that portfolio is a part of it. It's easy for me as a teacher to see where English language arts is assessed. I go straight to the state assessment. I've got performance indicators for students. If we're looking at employability skills, where are those assessed? This portfolio and this rubric are a means of local assessment that feathers in not just with IPS, but in many ways employability skills, which are social emotional learning in a lot of instances. So I wanted to address that before we went further into the weeds. I think that's an answer to the why, at least my why, for why this is an important part of my work. And then also the iteration that you see on how might we establish this means we're flexible and we're open to input from other agencies, other partners, because CTE isn't just something that high schools produce or provide. It's also the post-secondary institution. It's also for out-of-school youth through the local workforce development centers that help get kids a second chance. So we want to be open to our partners in developing something innovative that will work in Kansas. Important tool in that project is our workforce GIS. And so the top right bar, you'll see a bunch of little icons. I think there's a link to the site within the information that you've been provided. So this taps into data resources provided by the Department of Labor, by KSDE, by the Department of Commerce. What you're looking at is a map of Kansas that has projections within the health industry. I've got about 30 slides that go with the GIS that have the legend pop down. It tells you what the colors mean. It tells you what the symbols mean. And I can provide that to you, or I can walk you through it at some time. Maybe we could do a webinar for the board on just an off Wednesday if you want more information about how the system works. The green dots are illustrated up there are the high schools that have the health services pathway. So you can look at where those are dispersed by the green dots. The blue dots are health service providers. So those are potential targets for partnership around work-based learning. If I want to have a student have an opportunity to a job shadow, where are the employers at? So you can actually hover over that blue dot, click on it, and it will give you the name of the employer, size of the employer. I can zoom into street level. And so I did a map of Topeka, and I can get in and I can look at Hummer Park, and I can look at TCAL, and I can look at the health service providers that are within 4 blocks of that learning institution. So if a student has transportation issues, the most logical partner is somebody who's close. And if they're within walking distance, it's relatively easy to get them over there for a job shadow. Or you can arrange a Suburban to go through and drop people off at different locations if you want to get them to a work-based learning opportunity. So understanding where the partners are at, you can get a broad overview of where we've got high density within the health industry, and then where we're feathered out a little thinner. And there may be some things going on there that are more organic than a state-approved pathway. We just have to do a little bit tighter local scan to get that information than what we can get from the data sources we have. So this is a good tool for looking at who the partners are in the space, and then maybe diagnostically as a workforce readiness tool where we really need to mobilize around providing some access to pathways. We're pretty excited about school redesign because every time the schools come in to present to you, we see great things that are happening around the CTE space. When Beloit comes in and they talk about their summer learning opportunities, going to train, the wind energy project, all of these things tie back into building those student success skills around employability, which we're interested in, choosing a learning path for them, which is the personalized learning, real-world application through projects and opportunities to further develop those skills, and then where we can partner with the community to take advantage of resources when some of our schools are resource thin. And expertise is hard to come by. Computer scientists is easier to find within the industry than it is within the education sector, just because of the way salary schedules rank. So we're excited about the work. We think it ties in very well, and we have some dates coming up for you to plug in to get more information. We have one Impact Institute in which Natalie will be presenting this in its 90-minute version, which we did together at Washburn last week. We also have the Kansas KACTE Summer Conference, which I've mentioned. And then we will be coming to your region in September. And we've partnered with post-secondary institutions to bring some of our teachers onto community college and technical college campuses as we update our programming, talk about the work-based initiatives and some other things. There's also a Workforce Innovation Opportunity Conference in Wichita at Wichita State University, October 7th and 8th. That will be our final meeting for the Perkins Local Needs Assessment. And that would be a great time to connect your schools with their post-secondary partners and talk about those services that can help students be more successful as we pass the baton. We also have the KSDE annual conference in October. There will be more information be provided on this. Natalie, do you have any summary comments before we begin our discussion?
No, I know there's a lot of great work going on in the state. We want to make sure that equity and access is available to all students. And we're hoping career awareness and exploration can happen early and often so more students can have those more long-term experiences. So
yeah, when you were showing the graphic on that continuum, one of the things during the elementary section, there were some high school kids doing career exploration. And then when you went to the career exploration at the next level with Mr. Disney, there were some elementary kids at that level. So I think it's important to think about where kids loop through that continuum and where they go back to the awareness stage as they learn more knowledge. When you're picking your career path as a 7th grader, there may be opportunities that you're not even aware of yet that you need guidance through.
thank you.
So Natalie, Stacy, thank you. Can you go back to the very beginning or the infographic? And then we're going to, just pull up that graph on career preparation, if you would, right there. So first of all, what you're seeing, the product, is world-class work that they have done, and lots of other people, but they've spearheaded this work, and they've brought a lot of people together. And I'm reminded, you may not have ever heard of a gentleman named Dr. Ted Sizer, but he was advocating in the 1980s a different school. He wrote a book called Horse's Compromise that when I was doing my doctorate work was very popular. He's passed away now, but if you read any of his work, this is his work. He's basically was saying you need Maxes of the world to go do the work and then put all the skills together and present it, and it's very complicated, and then you need people that can examine that. This is world-class work. When we say lead the world, Jim and I are going to be in Denver here in a few hours, and we're going to see, he's going to see things. He's going to go, we're way ahead of that, right? So thank you. Now, here's the challenge. So you're getting in the weeds, right? You're getting the weeds of the work today. But as you look at this and you look at internships, and it's 30%, I want to make sure that they understand. That's 30% of the schools that you surveyed are doing internships. Even of the 30% of the schools that say they're doing internships, not every kid's getting an opportunity for an internship like Max. That is the challenge. Every school first, then every kid. And that moves it from Ted Sizer 30 years ago saying we ought to do something to, yes, we've got a plan to do it, to actually doing it. And that is the hard work ahead. Won't say this was easy, but that's really hard because you've got to go to 286 and you've got to go to, yes, from Blue Valley to Ashland and figure out the resources, as Stacy said, that can bring that to bear. And that's why it takes some time. But this is where most states finish their work. And this is really the beginning of the work. And again, I think Kathy leaned over it. This is really good, she said. And it's really good.
Yeah,
It's
I'd
really
like
good.
to be cautious about setting objectives around the numbers, because just presenting the definitions to people on what an internship is going to change the way they report that metric. So what they're reporting as an internship right now might be on-the-job training. And if there's not education that's attached to that, it's not what we're asking for in an internship. They've got to be moving the needle in other ways just than clocking in. We expect academic gains, cognitive gains, employability skill gains, civic engagement, not just clocking in. So I just mentioned that because I don't want to set hard targets the first year of this initiative.
And I want to tag on one other thing. We're going to do some recognition, right, of the best programs, star recognition and gold level. We're going to, we were going to roll that out a year ago and we postponed it to this year. You're not going to see very many, if any, schools at the gold level, because that's where we're going. And they're going to say, well, you hear this all the time. We're already doing that. We're really good with some kids on some days. Each kid, every day, and that's a huge undertaking. So I want to thank you, and I want to acknowledge the work that you've done. It's really, really good work. And now we've got to convey that work, and now we've got to get every school district to involve in that work. Thank you.
Well, my thanks also. I did lean over to Randy, said, this is really good. This is, I think, the information we've been wanting and the direction we've been wanting to go. So thank you. I know this is a lot of hard work, and we've got, I'm sure we'll hear more about the Perkins work as you continue. That'll be coming back to us as the other work, and your partnership with the other agencies, critically important. So thanks for that's not always easy. So thanks for that. We've got a lot of questions. So board members are obviously very interested. I have a feeling we may have you back another time or two, would be my guess. So we'll start with Jim Porter.
3 points. First of all, this is excellence, and I really appreciate it. The second point, I don't appreciate you saying that you were born in 1968, because I graduated from college in 1968, and that makes me really, really feel old. Now, the next question is substantive.
I can fix that.
Shut up. The next question may not be fair, but Randy regularly gives us information about where the jobs are, where the good jobs are in Kansas, and then where the pathways are, and they don't always align. Are we doing anything to help schools address developing pathways that actually lead to jobs in the communities?
One thing that the Department of Labor did, we had a GIS workday, and we dove into the tool that we were going to be asking districts to use to plan pathways, and they have adjusted their data reporting so that it's in the language of pathways and not industry sectors. So that's one step. But also at the local needs assessment, they're going to be given a data set for their region that they're going to analyze.
Yes.
Michelle.
Thank you for your presentation today. I think this is amazing. It's amazing work that you've been doing and working on. I think it's important. I think it's going to be interesting to see data down the road as these students are out working in the workforce or getting experience, the employability afterwards for full-time work and staying in Kansas. We're educating them in Kansas. We want them to stay in Kansas and work in Kansas and fill those jobs that are needed in Kansas. And I think this is a great building opportunity. I did something similar in college where I worked 8 to 5. I didn't clock in. I had to sign in. I was in the field work where I was going into gerontology, did that for a month and then did a paper on that. I got credit hours for that, 3 credit hours. It was a lot of work, but and I got a job the day after I graduated from college in that field. So it's important to see that people can see their work, they're on time. Like you talked about civic, how are they doing as a team player? I think this is great, and this is what I was hearing when I was on the campaign. Probably 8 out of 10 were, what are we going to do about career technical education? And that was what parents and students and everyone were asking in the community. So we need to get the word out there, and this is a great start, and I think you're doing a fabulous job.
Ann?
Thank you. I've got several questions because I want to try to get more of this out to the superintendents. That mobile career lab, whose is it and where is it?
Yes, it's out of Wichita. We can
thought
share
it
the
was
flyer
Wichita, yeah.
and who you contact to schedule that.
But they will go other places. I wasn't
Yes.
sure what the availability was.
Yeah,
Okay.
there are some of those centered regionally. I know Washburn has one, Goodland has one, and they'll roll out.
Okay, well, I'll get with you later. The Kansas Career Navigator, is that available to anybody online? Because I have adults calling me going, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up or what my next move is. And I know we have stuff for kids, but I wasn't sure if anybody could use it.
Yes, there's a small card in your placard with the website
Okay.
address. If not, we'll get that to you.
But we can
It's
get
also-
that to adults,
Yes,
anybody?
it's
Okay,
it's
great.
open to, yes, to everyone.
And who is your target market for these? Because it kind of covers the world, and what are we doing to get the information out other than waiting for them to come to an Impact Institute?
This resource we distributed in the spring at the IPS Roadshow. So the different sites around the state, talking with career development counselors and career and technical education. So it was shared at that time.
But if your counselor didn't go to that, then how do they even know this exists?
It's posted, but that's a good point. We've shared it at the last year's KSDE annual conference, and we've also shared it at the Career and Technical Education Summer Conference last
Should
year.
we just proactively mail it to, would this go to a counselor? Is that your target? I mean, if I send it to the superintendent, I'm not sure where it would go, but.
Yeah,
IPS.
we'll be meeting with our external IPS advisory group here in the very near future. I mean, they've vetted it, but then thinking about the professional development that we can offer for school districts to be able to pick that up. The September series that we'll be doing will get us into each region and get
Right.
people talking about it. And then we'll go through the service centers as well to make those resources available. And for the next iteration of IPS initiative, we're looking at creating registration pages where districts can come in and a la carte create the presentation they would like to receive in-house. I mean, that's kind of the next place for us to go. We've done saturations through road shows for 2 years, and we've had 4 of them. So I think we've reached our penetration with that. And it's really time for those schools to call in and say, we're having trouble with teacher buy-in and we really need this. And so if we've got a way to register that request, we can provide technical assistance through either one of the service centers or through contracts that we can provide and get access out to those schools.
What about this one?
That would be a part of that IPS delivery.
But this just came out, so.
Yeah, we're creating that registration page
But this will be
right now.
something you'll hand out in September as well?
Yeah.
Through all that?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then they could also, I mean, once superintendents start finding out about it, if they want somebody to come in and do a 90-minute in-service presentation on work-based learning in their school or in their service center, we can
Okay.
do that.
Well, you mentioned talking to workforce centers on placing students and talking to KBOR on externships for teachers. So are we still in the talk stage? Do we have hard dates about when you could call the workforce center and they'd be available to help you place kids?
We're still in the talk stage.
Okay.
We brought this through the governor's education subcommittees, and we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to participate in that date setting and what they can offer and what the target outcomes are. So, and that next meeting's on the 25th.
Well, I like the emphasis on every kid, because I know we've all been around with Randy to schools, and you've seen these great little coffee shops, and you know who's working in there, and it's not all kids, you know? And so I'm hoping we'll find more if we have school-based opportunities for every kid. And I know we're going to, well, if anybody's interested, we're meeting after lunch with the Department of Commerce and the unions to talk about how we get these student-registered apprenticeships booming, because I think there's a real opportunity for that. So glad to be working with you on that, too. I appreciate you guys taking the time.
I'd
Thank you,
like to
Madam
mention
Chair.
one of our Gemini schools, which would be Hillsborough, which participated in the Project Search grant this year around special needs students and placing in mainstream workplace environments. And they were a great example, and there are some
Well,
programs
it's not
out
just
there.
that, it's like, are we just picking the student council kids, the best kids, you know, are we reaching out to kids who really need to know how to learn to work in a coffee shop and, you know, get those skills and getting them in the school coffee shop? So, thank you.
Jim McNeese.
Wow. Thank you. Good to see. Lots of things going on around the state, a lot of conversation. And this is great support. But two things are terribly absent. One is, which frustrates me a lot, because I'm going to not talk about this, but project-based. When I say project-based, I know exactly what I'm talking about. Dina probably has a whole different definition of project-based.
I probably do.
You know, and not because we're wrong. We're probably both right. But what is it? So when you say internships and mentorships and work-based and coffee shops, and you're flying over a lot of people, because none of this was ever provided I never took a class in administration or never talked about how to build community relations, how to do this. Three things that I think we could do that would really help is, you know, getting those kinds of things defined for people, having a rubric that says I'm here and this is what a 1 is, you know, and this is what a 2 is. Because quite frankly, you know, I've been to a lot of the different places that have the coffee shop or the bank or whatever. And as Ann was saying, you know, it touches a few kids, typically kids that had to go through some kind of process to get there. And it's not for all kids. And as Randy said, it needs to be for all kids. You know, so I found in the past, when I was working with administrators and such, that if we had rubrics that showed us, here's what a 1 is, you know, you're talking about it, your sister did it, you know, and but what a 5 is something else. And can we define that? Can we communicate that to folks? You know, would be, I think, you know, it would help a lot. And what's the difference between an internship and a mentorship? You know, and then the other thing is, how do we help school districts who really do want to do this, but don't have training, don't have expertise, and old Keith comes up to him in Wichita and says, hey, you got to do this. And it's not in my definition of who I am as a building leader or as a department leader or as a teacher. That's not my bailiwick. You know, and it means I have to develop a whole new set of skills. I have to take risks. How do we minimize those for people and give them maximum supports? You know, so here's this nice thing here, but I'd like to see so you want to get started. This is how you do it, okay? Because when you talk about kids going into mentorships, we have to vet teachers who are there. What's the vetting process in terms of having, you know, whether it's the local drugstore or, you know, hospital or whatever, how do we vet those people they're going to be with? We put them out there and they turn out to be crazy people, you know, and there's plenty of them. Not all, most of them are really good. But there's nuances to putting a program together that go way beyond what's even in here. This is the tip of the iceberg. Somebody says, I want to do it. You want to run a feedlot? It's more than just looking at the cows. You know, there's a lot of work to do. And I don't see us providing those steps and support. I see us saying it's really cool, you know, and here's some things that you can do and some nice surveys and things you could take. But if you want to put a kid, leaving school in a business, working with somebody, and that somebody's who, what training have we given that somebody? You know, and have we vetted them? And we're transporting them? And there's just a zillion questions. This is hard work on everybody's part, but it's really good work. And business wants us to do it. And we have to help business understand that there's steps to be taken. Okay? So I want a how-to manual for a district that wants to do something. This is what you need to do. You know, here, you know.
I think that's exactly why we're ready for a pilot.
Okay. Now
Because
I'm
they'll help us
interested.
develop that, and we're not ready to go prime time with this. Because
Yeah, and there's lots of resources. Another thing I would suggest is there's people who are doing isolated things very successfully, usually directed by a very motivated teacher or administrator or somebody or business in town. You know, so how do we get the other ones who aren't highly motivated, knowledgeable, or interested right now to all of a sudden find out they're interested, knowledgeable, and going to be ready? You know, and Randy, I'm with you, and Ann, you guys. You know, I don't want to hear about the kid that did really well. Like, I want to see all kids have the same opportunities. You know, and we're not going to be changing the world for these kids unless we do that. You know. I'd be happy to work with you on this. I can torment you to no degree. This is cool stuff, but you've got to be ready to go to work. Yeah, and we need to give them a lot of support so they don't make mistakes others have made. But business is ready. I've already sent out emails to business people in Wichita that they need to go to your thing here. And don't, in the future, don't have meetings that, like in Wichita, and I'm going to be in Topeka at a board meeting on the same day. So. But thank you. Hey, good job. Don't take this as criticism. Take it as we need to move forward. You know,
Steve
you're
Roberts.
doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think most of us agree that more flexibility in the awards of certificates and credits is warranted. I'm not going to be here when we land on the moon because I'm going to be here another year and a half. We're not getting to the moon in that time frame. We're going to get close, though, I think. I want to discuss the concept of teacher of record. I'm not sure what the law says. When I was a substitute teacher, quite often I'd be a substitute and I would be the teacher of record while the para actually knew more about the kids. But I was officially the teacher of record for the day or the week or the month or however long the appointment was. I came here trying to plant the seed that you don't necessarily have to go to teachers college to be a great teacher. And I think one thing that we can help our districts with, and some of the things that Jim was alluding to, is to focus on a teacher of record. Is there any way that we can give authority to people who work for J.E. Dunn, the Disneys of the world, or others, without saying, I'm sorry, you can't be a teacher of record unless you jump through that hoop. That's what my whole life is about. That's what I've tried to do while I'm here. That's what I'm trying to do right now. I was informed yesterday that despite a lot of driving experience, for me to teach, to be a driving instructor, I'd have to go to college for another 9 hours of credit. I hope my fellow board members don't just accept that next month. I hope we can talk about it. So the concept of a teacher of record, who can actually sign off, as you said, Stacy, we don't want people clocking in. We need development. We need to develop social skills. We need civic engagement. We need academic preparation. I contend that there are people who can take a well-written document and their sense of professionalism and deliver on that without necessarily having been to teachers college. And that's why I'm here, and I hope you hear what I'm saying.
Ben Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is exciting work. This stuff is very important to me. I come from a family that a lot of them are tradespeople. whether in farming, agriculture, or aerospace work. And so I applaud the direction we're going. I wish we could move a lot faster. I echo Mr. McNeese's statements, right in line with what he just said, and I just wanted to reiterate some of the stuff that he said, but I also have a concern that I've had. I mean, we talk about the pathways and the accessibilities that some schools, I've had some schools drop pathways for this next school year because of some shifting in courses and the availability for those kids to have access to those pathways. And this is a really long conversation, and I would like to visit with you sometime on that matter, because it's a concern that I've had from a lot of my small rural districts, that they've dropped pathways. I've had one school drop 3 pathways for this next school year. And if we say we're standing up for every kid, regardless of where they are, we need to make sure that we are doing that and giving access to all of our kids, no matter where they're located in our state. So it's a conversation we can have outside of here, because I have a feeling it's going to be rather lengthy. So I appreciate it, Mr. Smith. Thank you.
Jean Clifford.
Thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. I just wondered if you had any information on whether the Department of Commerce or the Department of Labor has any guides or information available to the people that they serve on how to interact with our districts to gain student apprenticeships or student internships.
Chastity Troxel has a fact sheet, and we can share that with you. And there's an application process for the Youth Registered Apprenticeship. Currently, she has been in the position since January. If we can make sure that that is shared with you. Kansas Works also has resources on their website that we can share. I know on their kansasworks.com site, the businesses that are registered apprentice, they're registered with the state of Kansas, that is designated. So if you're interested in looking to see those businesses that may want to promote youth registered apprenticeship, their database reflects that, and we can share that with you. I know that there's a report on the Youth Employment Project in Wichita, a year-end report that has a lot of details of what they did in their project, and we could also share that. Keith shared that with us.
Thank you. I just think that with several agencies working together, we can really get more students involved in this, because this is our workforce for the future. So thank you.
Thank you again. You know, as I look at this work, and actually I'm going to try to be at the Impact Institute next week, so hopefully I can catch your session. And, you know, I think Ann kind of referred to, you know, how do we get this out to folks? And I think the marketing piece of this is going to be key, because we have some folks who don't come to trainings. So, you know, what do we do to provide things for them? So I like your idea of looking at some districts and figuring out how to do some technical assistance. And then as far as the Perkins information, I assume will be being updated fairly regularly on how that's proceeding. So we'll probably be expecting you back at some point in time on Perkins. I know we'll have to do the final approval, but maybe kind of an intermediate thing, because you've kind of presented kind of 2 big pieces today that I think are all very interesting and very helpful. One other thing I guess I might recommend is, you know, you listed a lot of upcoming events. You might make sure that Peggy or somebody has a sheet that can maybe be sent out to some of us, as far as because some of those things I'm sure some of us would like to go to. So you might make sure that that gets to her, so we can have that as an opportunity to kind of take a look at and maybe sign up for some things. So Ann, you got something?
Just a question. Since this was information only, will we be voting on these new pathway changes next month?
Okay, so that'll be back to us next month.
Okay.
So
Is it next month, or are we waiting until the Perkins reauthorization?
The Perkins reauthorization will come back to you in January. We'd like to have the pathway approvals next month.
So in this booklet is the information on those 4
Correct.
pathways, correct? So we might want to make sure. Okay. So that's available in there. Okay, thank you very much. Again, appreciate your presentation. I think board will go ahead and take a break now and then come back and look at the calendar piece. So 10 minutes, 10:45. Ready to take a look at the calendar for the year 2020 and 2021, the board calendars. In your agenda, these are on pages 367 and 368. We are approving these today. This is action item today, and once we get these set, Peggy will forward these to other organizations, educational organizations. They always want to know, of course, when our meetings are, and will be posted on the website. So we want to approve these today, and if you look at these, historically, our meetings have been the second Tuesday and Wednesday of the month. I know we had some changes the last many years because to accommodate one board member's schedule. One issue this year in the 2020 calendar has to do with November because of when Veterans Day is. So if you look at that, what we have scheduled at this time with this proposed calendar is a one-day meeting on November 10th, and then the 11th is a holiday. So that is the proposal. Otherwise, they're all on the second Tuesday and Wednesday of the month for both years. Did I say that all right, Peggy?
Yes, you did. Yeah. Yes.
I get that all right? Okay. So questions, comments, or a motion? Mr. Porter.
I move the Kansas State Board of Education establish the regular meeting dates for 2000, does that say? My thing goes off here. I guess 2020 and 2021 as presented.
Okay. We have a motion. We have a second. Ben Jones. Question, Dina? Nope. Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. That looks like a 10-0 to me. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now we'll move to reports. Okay, committee reports. We'll start with the legislative. Jim Porter or Dina, any information for us? Jim?
Yeah, Dina and I are working on legislative agenda. I think that we have a scheduled workshop in November, if I'm correct. So we will be, after we kind of get that list together, we'll send it to everybody, and if you have suggestions, please let us know. I only have one other thing to say. It's not directly related to this, but then I'll be through. We have a new director of special education that they're called something else, but there has been, I think it's safe to say there's been some distrust between the disability community and the department over the years. And so I have kind of stepped out of my lane, which is, those of you that know me know that's not terribly unusual. And there's going to be a reception, and we're cooperating with the Disability Rights Center, where those people that advocate, the advocates for disabilities, and there are about 30 of them, are invited to a reception to meet the new, so we can have that beginning of that relationship building. And that will take place in this room right after Wednesday of our next meeting. So, you know, it's not something that I'm expecting everybody to stay for, but if you want to, it'll be from 2 to 4. That would be fine. But I think it's a good opportunity to start relationship building and repair where it needs to be. That's it for me.
Okay.
Dina, do you have?
I really don't have too much more to add, but thought that I've shared with Jim is that hopefully we can have some language when we come to talk to you. Also, if we're initiating the legislative motion or movement. And I think that it's important that we be able to have some way of getting and letting you have input to us during the session itself as things arise. So we know kind of what you're thinking as well as what we're thinking is in the same vein as the membership. So I think we can cover that as time goes on, but we've come up with a few ideas and I think we can share those with you later, but certainly feel like you have the same right to raise certain ideas as well. So we will consider those right along with the rest of them. So thank you.
And I think as we're into, I believe it's mainly November and December, some of these task force that have been meeting rather regularly will either be giving an update or a report. And I would guess a number of those task force reports that will come to us will probably be tied up in some legislative suggestions that we might have. So as we think about those, and a lot of the things that are going on right now, we've got a number of things going on, the bullying that Jean is on, and there's others that are going on. So those will be reporting to us towards the end of this year. So that's kind of some things that we're thinking about in that way. Will probably fit into some of the legislative agenda that we'll have that discussion about. So just for your information. Okay, policy committee, Dina, anything? Probably not.
Well, we are planning on meeting next month, and
Janet was worried.
So if any of you notice something that needs to be changed in policy or that you feel should be anyway, please talk to either Anne or Jean or myself, and we will consider those when, or you can also email Peggy and tell her as well, and she'll pass that on to all of us. So anyway, I know Janet did such a great job last year that they've totally looked at the whole policy, and there may not be very much for us to make changes or need for us to make changes. So, but we're going to open it up for everybody in case you've seen something anyway. So anyway.
Thank you.
We will meet next month on Tuesday at lunch.
Thank you. Communications committee, are you planning on discussing Western Kansas options?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So Jim and Ben?
Well, I would say on the Western Kansas trip, we've been bullied out of our dates that we had by the bullying committee. We've been asked to move it to the first week of October or the last day of September. So that's what we're looking at right now. This will not change in August unless you want to change, because I won't be here in August. Regrettably, I will be traveling. But that's what we're looking for, September 30th, 1st, 2nd, 3rd. It's either going to be Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, depending on how we can set things up in Western Kansas. If that doesn't come to fruition, we'll have to be thinking about next year.
So board members, you might think with me. You might take a look at that. Those dates worked well with Randy's calendar and,
Yes.
and Jean considering.
Doesn't work well with Ben's calendar.
Well, and we're probably not going to hit everybody, so. Well, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, in that week.
In the school life, Monday's not as busy and we can interfere with them, intrude on their days. Certainly don't want to go on Thursday or Friday with potential volleyball and football. My gosh, wouldn't want to.
And this will be an optional meeting.
Yes.
Those that can come, and if you can't, that's okay. We had
be.
kind of a
Yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday
tentative
this year.
idea. Do you want to run over what? Nothing's finalized.
Right. Well, certainly some things are finalized. We'll definitely be going to Liberal and Dighton as two of our redesigned schools that have been there, and that's always great. And we're looking at Garden City and possibly some others, but it'd be similar to other events we've had in terms of meeting with local business and as well as school boards and administrators and teachers. And students.
We will not be conducting any business.
There will be no.
It'll be very
business.
Similar to what we did when we went down to Wichita
Yes.
and saw that.
It'll be informational and exchanging conversation. It's a good public relations tool, and it's a good way of gathering information, and it's another good way of affirming people who are out there. Western Kansas is Western Kansas, and for some reason. And being a former Western Kansas person myself, we sometimes feel like the state doesn't recognize us all the time. And I think it's good for us to go out there and listen to them and affirm that they're part of our state and doing a great job. We have a lot to learn from them. And it is workforce focused as well.
Well, and
Very much so.
It'll give us a good idea of workforce focus in a totally different region of the state that focuses on some different items than what we have otherwise. So.
And it allows us to see our redesigned schools in operation, both being very successful.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Anything else on the communications?
I would affirm what Jim was saying about and Dina in terms of having some kind of a legislative agenda to communicate to people, because one of the things that, I just had a conversation with a local legislator, senator, just the other night, and his question was, well, where do you guys stand on this? It would be good for us to have that capacity to say, this is what the direction we want to go. So in some way, if we could, come together in an informal way or a formal, Jim and Dina, not to give you an agenda, but we could get the board to look at some of the issues that are going to be on the agenda and see where we stand on them. We might not all agree, but we'll know where we are. That would really help with communication to the districts and, both the boards, the local boards, as well as the administration and teachers.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
A couple other committee NASB new member institute, Jean and Ben, you guys both did to that. Anything you'd want to share?
It was for me, it was a whirlwind trip. I think I was on the ground less than 47 hours out there, but it was very enlightening, especially dealing with the parliamentarian and learning procedure there, as well as getting to visit with other new members from other states. There were quite a few from Nebraska and quite a few from Missouri that were there, as well as we got to sit with the people from Michigan quite a bit and to discuss things. And there's some really neat things happening in Utah in regard to technology in the classroom, which was very enlightening and a good conversation there. So it was a very, very productive trip, and I feel like I came back smarter than I left, but I probably forgot most of it by now.
I just would like to say that one of the things that impressed me the most, and it was a very worthwhile and informative trip, was that we are so blessed in Kansas to have our board structure be constitutionally authorized. And to have the structure that we do have here because we can do so much more than many other states to improve students' opportunities and student success than other states can, because they are hampered by their structure and their ability to control things in other areas. So we're very fortunate here, and that really impressed me. Thank you.
I think when folks have an opportunity to see folks from other states, that's one thing we all become aware of rather quickly. So glad you were able to attend. Dina, I think you went to the National Federation of High School Associations meetings. I don't remember where it was this time, but anything to report there?
It was in Indianapolis, and you have that in my report, the information regarding it. The more detailed report I gave to Peggy, so you can access that. If there's something you'd like permanently, I'll be glad to share that with you, because it's fairly lengthy. And we had it was pretty close to a full week of, and it started on the 28th, and we flew back on, or left on the 3rd, of July. So it was a very good meeting. Met a lot of people who have found out the states are dealing with some of the same issues. And I will tell you that the National Federation of High Schools does have a learning site, and while a lot of it focuses on activity coaches and sports coaching, they do have one on vaping, and they're working on social and emotional learning as well. So there are videos on those issues. So I think you can go to their website and probably go to learning. It's called Learning, that you can access that information from them as well. So
Thank you. Janet, early childhood, have you been to one of those?
I've been to a bunch of.
Okay, well, why don't you share just a little information about some, I haven't had a chance to attend one of those, but if you would share
Yeah,
a
I've been
little bit.
to, I went to Shawnee Mission, Baser, and KCK. And they're fascinating, and I'm going to go to Lawrence in about a week, because every one was just a little bit different, but they all are very, very strong advocates of early childhood, very, very strong. And they all agree also that we need to serve all kids, and we're not doing that. There was especially a push on that in KCK. But I think they're going to get a lot of information coming out of this. You know, they said that they want to have the funding provided for early childhood, no waiting lists for preschool. There's waiting lists everywhere. And they want to integrate all skills, the social, emotional, as well as the, the educational piece. Gaps, they said, included funding, infrastructure, time, staff, parent, education, et cetera. And the big problem today, honestly, is even if they had the funding, they don't have the infrastructure to handle them. So these are things that, but there was a lot of, and there was a good turnout, at every single one I went to. The smallest turnout was in KCK, and I went to the 5 o'clock meeting, but then had a meeting earlier in the day. They said pack the room. So, and the others were very large turnouts. So those were very worthwhile. If you haven't been to one, there's a few still left. Like I say, I know there's one in Lawrence in a week or so, and I encourage everyone to go.
So Peggy, you might update us on any dates that are still left.
I
and
think next
the-
week is it.
Is next week it? Okay.
Yeah. So if you get a chance, I'm sure we'll hear from Amanda once they're able to synthesize all that information.
Yeah, they're
So-
going to, they're basically what they're doing, I found kind of fascinating. They're copying us, what we did with our vision. You know, they're going around to all these communities and they're gathering all this information. They're going to have it compiled just like we did. So I don't know whether they're using K-State or not, but are they using KU? Well,
Share the wealth.
Sheila, anyway, I was impressed.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Individual written reports are in your folder, so please take a look at those when you have an opportunity. Yeah.
I just simply want to say, I've got my Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee in there, which you can see. But one thing I wanted to tell you guys about, because this was just, it's always fascinating to me, but I just wanted to make you all know, I'm sure you know, or maybe you don't know. If you don't know, I want to inform you. I always try to attend the the Kansas Juvenile Correction Facility Complex, the Juvenile Correctional Complex graduation ceremonies. I'm invited to those. But prior to doing that, I went to, it's called Lawrence Gardner High School. Their school has a name and they're accredited by us. And they also have Washburn on campus that trains kids in technical schools, technical classes. But I guess what I would like to encourage you to do, if you've never done this, because they're just thrilled whenever any of us show up. Carolyn used to go with me to these graduations, but beyond the graduations, I would highly recommend each of you go and tour the school. They would love to have you. You would be really impressed. You know, now prior to me touring those, I went to Johnson County and Wyandotte County and toured their facilities. So you might check in your own districts to see where you have a juvenile facility. And they're happy to have you come because they offer education. Shawnee Mission has one in Olathe, and Olathe School District provides it. Wyandotte County has one in KCK, and KCK provides the education. And so I think that was my concern, were these kids truly being educated? They really are. And they're doing an amazing job. And so I would encourage you to visit your facilities and hopefully visit the one here in Topeka. And if you ever have an opportunity, attend one of the graduations because it's amazing. 16 kids graduated. They didn't walk when I went. I was talking with people later. They told me that since the first of the year, over 30 more have received their diplomas. Kids come and go, as you well know, in this facility. And after the graduation ceremony, I was walking out to my car, and these grandparents stopped me and visited with me, and they said, "We just want you to know that if our grandson was not here, he would have never received his diploma." So we're really very grateful for what they're doing here. I mean, we hate to say it, but it's really been a benefit to him. So sometimes these are our lost kids, and I just want to make sure we don't forget our kids that are kind of our lost ones, because they could be successful. And then the most important thing I want to tell you about this, because this was fascinating to me, the mayor of Leavenworth was the speaker. The mayor of Leavenworth was at the juvenile facility when he was a young man. He made some bad choices. And he went to become an adult, make a few more bad choices, and went to the adult facility. He has totally turned his life around. And he's got a whole story about it, mainly finding God, but nevertheless, he's turned his life around and he wants to contribute to his community. He's a pastor now, and he served on the city council, and he's now mayor. What a success story, and what a wonderful story for these youth. They were literally fascinated. And so anyway, those are my words. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Requests for future agenda items? And I don't know if this is a future agenda item, and Randy, I'm throwing this at you, and I don't know where we go with this, but Janet, you kind of talking about juveniles and incarcerated and the education that they get. And I'd like to have us have a conversation sometime, and I don't know who presents this to us, about our foster youth and how are they ever, especially the ones that are continually in foster homes, and unfortunately have to move, how are they able to get an education? Because especially when you get to high school, you're talking about credits, and those kids are in and out of schools. And so how do they do that? And is there something that we need to be aware of, and something maybe we as a board can recommend be done to help support that? So if that could be, and I have no clue who would present that as an agenda item, but I think it might be an interesting topic of conversation.
Can I speak to that? I'd just like to speak to that. I'm on that Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee. We've talked a lot about the foster program because so many of our foster kids end up in the juvenile program. And there's so many challenges with them because when they do move, they can't go to school because their papers haven't followed them. So they're sitting at home with even foster parents who want to help them. So I'm wondering if maybe someone from even the juvenile justice part, from the committee, might be willing to come speak because they've got that data, because we were really looking at the foster program. I mean, we have someone serving on the committee that's with children and families. So maybe somebody like that, because that was very interesting, I thought.
Yeah, I think it just might be interesting for us to study that and see if we have any suggestions on how we could proceed there. Mr. Porter?
I was at a board meeting just last week or last month at Parsons. Parsons has a significant number of foster kids, and they might be a resource about how that affects schools and how they deal with it when we proceed.
Yeah, I'm sure there'd be some interesting information that we'd find there. Michelle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd be interested to find out how many of those students end up in like a virtual school setting. How many of those, because a lot of them are coming with very few credit hours, and then they have to catch up.
One of the projects that JAG was working on was to do that, have a virtual component. And I think there's some merit to that, whether JAG runs it or something else. One of the issues, and when we talk about this issue, I'll talk more about this with you. It makes sense to me, and we'll see if it makes sense to you, that when a kid goes from Leavenworth to Manhattan to Stockton to Cedarvale, they can move. There can be this delay because the host family doesn't know they're getting this child, and then their records they move so often, and it's in the middle of the night sometimes. If you could have a point of contact, so a case manager with access to virtual school that the state would run, so you didn't have to log into different systems, it would seem to make sense to me for that clientele in particular. So once we get the numbers and take a look at that, I think that's one of the things I'd like to have a conversation about too.
Okay, all right. Okay, any other requests for agenda items? Ann?
A second. It looks like we have a virtual early childhood thing this Saturday online, and then there's still one in Hutch, Lawrence, and El Dorado, right? So we've got several opportunities if people haven't done the community meetings.
That's for early childhood.
Oh, early childhood.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I
okay.
backed up, but before I
Okay.
forgot.
Yeah, and I know that foster care issue, we've discussed it at both the early child care thing in Emporia and in Newton in my district. That has been a topic of conversation, and I was glad to have DCF at the one in Emporia. They had representatives, and we talked a lot about that paper trail as a result of that.
Okay, thank you. Chairman's report, just a reminder, we do have one more Impact Institute next week in Pratt, and it's the 17th and 18th, I believe. So I plan on being there on the 17th, so take a look and see if that's something that would work for your schedule. NASB conference would be October 16th through the 19th, as I remember, and it will be in Omaha, so very convenient as far as us, and it's right after the board meeting. Do we know at this point in time, if you are planning on attending, let Peggy know fairly soon. She can make the reservations in the NASB room block, but she needs to know how many days you plan to stay. So please get that information to Peggy. I will not be able to attend this year. I have a meeting the day after, and then I have something back at home that weekend, so I won't be able to attend. So just aware on that. Our next meeting, August 13th and 14th, Jim mentioned the reception on Wednesday after the meeting, and then we will be doing votes on accreditation. And then we're also going to have information on the science of reading. Cindy Hedeke is going to present to us some information, not the whole thing that she does, but some information, as we are going to be presented with information from the dyslexia group at some point in time, I think this fall yet. It might be good for us to have a little bit of background information. She presents some rather very interesting information, so she's going to present some of that. And we're going to have an update on the school breakfast grant also, so that will be good information that will be coming up in August. And then, as I mentioned earlier, come this fall, we're going to have lots of task force recommendations coming into us, so just be prepared for that. I think most of them come to us before they'll go to the legislature, at least the ones that are going to the legislature, so we'll be busy with that. Okay, we'll move on to board travel. So you might want to take a look. We do need to take a look at your board travel, see if you need to approve anything or add anything. I think Peggy's got everything. So take a look, and if not, Michelle?
Remove July 15th. I met with Mark yesterday. I will not be able to attend the vaping. It's bi-weekly, but I will not be able to attend that meeting, so we can take that off. And do you need anything in August yet? Do we need? But otherwise, July 30th, I have that event in Paola, and then the opening of 2 middle school in Battle Creek and Spring Hill. I'm going to attend a grand opening for that, and that's the same day, July 30th.
Any other additions for either July or really early August? Dina?
I'd like to add July 24th, the Student Council Leadership Workshop. And that's all, I think.
Okay. Going to? Same thing. Okay. Anything else? If not, I'd take a motion to approve the travel. Ben, second. Michelle, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. All righty. Well.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Did we overstep our bounds? Did we finish in the red? I'm not adding these numbers very quickly. It's pretty close, right?
I think we ended up with about 5,000 overall for the year.
In the red?
No.
Oh,
We were okay.
very good. Just curious. Thank you.
So we survived.
Mileage did go up to 58 cents a
Oh.
mile, so there'll be a little bump in what we see for your normal travel,
Okay.
which impacts your budget, and the new share amounts will fix that.
Okay. Okay. Nothing else for the good of the order. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.